I said, apparently there's a fire on the plane. And she looked up from her magazine and kind of looked around and said, well, I guess that means I have to put my shoes on. That was not helpful to me. That was not sage advice for me at that time. I had my shoes on. So I looked at the flight attendant, and the flight attendant was doing this, staring in the back of the plane. And I thought, that's not helping me either. There has to be something else. And so I did what everybody else did, unbuckled my seatbelt, stood up, and turned around just in time to see the two drunk guys. Aren't there always two drunk guys on a plane? What is that? I don't know what that is, but there are always two drunk guys. And the two drunk guys were lifting people out of the exit row, putting them in the aisle, and then getting the door off. And they jumped out onto the wing. Now, we were on the ground. I'm not exactly sure what they would have done if we were in the air, but we were on the ground. So obviously a little chaos ensued. The flight attendants went over, started talking to the drunk guys, got them back on the plane, did all these things. We pulled back up to the gate. Maintenance people are coming and going. I'm trying to get a hold of my brother who's a pilot. You know, what should I do? Should I get off the plane? Apparently there's a fire. What do I need to do? The flight attendants were calming everybody down, maintaining that calm level that flight attendants have. You know, they really don't get upset about anything. They just are calm. And so finally, I heard this banging. It just overtook I couldn't talk on the phone anymore because I kept hearing this banging. So I stood up again, and I turned around. Here's a maintenance guy with the door doing this. Boom, boom, boom. And then he'd stand back and he'd look at the door and he'd look at the hole, and then he'd, boom. And then he'd stand back and he'd look at the door and he went, oh. Flipped it like this, put it in, and locked the door. Okay? So pretty soon the captain comes out and he says, look, I live in Denver. I have 4 kids. I have a wife. I'm flying home. If you want to get off the plane, you certainly can. But I'm flying home. And so the maintenance team has fixed the plane. We're fine. Everything's good. Somebody in the back raised their hand, and the captain said, sir, do you have a question? And the guy said, yeah, the maintenance guy that fixed the plane, is that the guy that was working on the door? And then someone else said, I'm sorry, can we have free drinks all the way to Denver? And so the captain said yes. So we were flying open bar all the way to Denver, and we got back and everything was fine. Until I got off the plane and I got in the car of my stepmom who was picking us up, and she said, wow, Ed McCaffrey really broke his leg on Monday Night Football. Really, really badly. And I said, oh no, that's too bad. I have to watch that in the morning news. And when I got up the next morning and I walked out, that's not what I heard about. I walked out and I looked at the TV, and there was a building on fire in New York City. And it was a big building. And right then I saw the second plane hit the second tower. I had flown out of Boston Logan Airport the night before 9/11. And you know, the thing that was remarkable, aside from looking at that and saying, holy cow, our life, we don't know when it's going to end. And we don't know how it's going to end. The thing that was remarkable to me was not only that that made life more precious to me, as it does to all of the people that you help every day, because they realize that the majority of their life is behind them, not in front of them anymore. And so they have so many stories like I just told you, because they have experienced so much in their life. That was remarkable to me. But what was also remarkable to me is the calmness that I saw in the flight attendants as that happened. When the plane caught fire, the flight attendant didn't jump up and down and yell and scream. There was a calmness. And as I was thinking about coming and speaking to you, I thought, you know, you have to hire staff that has that calm. You have to hire staff that brings that calmness into the situation, because your patients and your patients' families are not always that calm. And I speak from experience. My mom actually has Alzheimer's. And so I know that patients' families are not that calm. So what you do every day is so important. And your staff is a continuation of you. So how you hire them and what you do is so important. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing I want you to think about, and I'm going to give you some tips, and I have some handouts that you can pick up in my business card if you want and ask me questions, whatever, afterwards. But I'm going to give you some tips to take home. So if you have questions about what I'm saying, please ask me, because I want you to be able to walk out those doors with something of value. I want you to walk out with some plan of attack for you and your staff. All right? Is that fair? And I may throw a few more heads around. Are we okay with that? Okay. All right, so what do you want to do first? The first step is to know what you want. You need to know what your goals are. You need to know what your goals are for your center, your assisted living center. You need to know what your goals are for your staff. You need to know what your goals are, regardless if they're revenue goals or how many clients you want to have in your center or how many employees you want to have. Whatever that is, that's the first thing you need to do, is identify what those goals are. And the next thing you need to do is think about what positions you need to make sure that you attain your goals. And this is a timeline. So here are the goals, here's positions. So you're going to think about what positions you want. We all want the guy with the cape, right? We all want that employee that's going to come in and have that consistent performance and be your rock star. Be your superhero. That's what you want. You want that superhero to be hired. So how do you find that out? If you know your goals, then you know what you want. You don't have to define that anymore. So often employers hire people and they don't have any clue what they want. They just need a warm body because they just lost somebody. So I want you to make sure that you're thinking about your goals and then think about what positions help you find those goals. Don't hire an MA to come into your center if a nurse is what you need. Think about what you need. Don't try to fill the gap. Think about what you need and hire the right person. Then we move on to the roles, responsibilities, and expectations. Now, roles, responsibilities, and expectations, really what I'm talking about is what are they going to do, right? What role do they have in your center? What are they going to do? And how do you want them to act? So roles and responsibilities really fall into that job description. How you want them to act is the expectation, all right? And we're going to talk a little more about that. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. Once you know what positions you need and what roles and responsibilities you want, then you know what kind of person do I need? What knowledge, skills, and abilities do they need to be successful at my assisted living center? And then you can write the job description. Now here's what I hear a lot of. People call me and they say, hey, I put an ad in and I got a whole bunch of applicants and they're not at all what I'm looking for. And so the first thing I say is, can I see your job description? And you know what they say? It's in my head. I have it, but I don't really have it written down. Writing that job description, going through these steps right here, allow you to write the job description and then that writes the ad. Was there an explorer, was it Shackleton? Shackelford? Does anybody know? Shackelford, right? And he went to the great winter tundra of wherever he went to. Where did he go? Antarctica, thank you. He went to Antarctica. And when he was doing that, he would put an ad in for people and he would say things in his ad like, horrible working conditions, no pay, you'll probably die. And he had people lining up to work with him. Wow, really? I mean, you'll never see your loved ones again. This is, well, I guess some people, that might be okay. But you know, when you look at these things, when you put your ad in, be realistic. He was very, very realistic about his advertisement for his employees. I had a friend of mine who said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that ad. And he was an artist with wood, but he had people that worked in a yard, like a lumber yard, in horrible conditions, winter, summer, whatever. So he put that in his ad. And whereas his past ads, he would get maybe 30 people that apply, he had 5 people apply. And I said, but what was the quality of those 5 people? And he said, I couldn't choose. I had to hire a couple of them because they were such high quality. So don't be afraid to talk about your environment in your ad. Don't be afraid to talk about your culture. Bring up what you want. Now let's talk a little more about the roles, responsibilities, and expectations because that is really going to play into it. The roles are truly how their job fits into the company. How does what they do help you do what you do? Help your mission and vision? How does what they do tie into your value statements? You want to start cementing them into your culture. Even in the interview, even in the advertisement, you want to start bringing them in and letting them know who you are. Picture this. You're out on your first date and you ask them to get married. Did anybody do that? I haven't had anybody raise their hand yet. I'm sure I will sometime, right? But that's what we do sometimes when we interview. We interview somebody for an hour and then we hire them. We're not really talking to them about what the culture's like. We're not letting them know who we are. Be sure and do that. The responsibilities are what they're going to do every day. The role in the company, how they fit in, the responsibility is what they're going to do every day. right? The expectations are going to be the same for everybody. You expect everyone to be appropriately dressed. You expect them to be certified. You expect them to have whatever licensure they need. You expect them to be courteous. You expect them to be on time. What else? How about a good attitude? Be respectful. Communication, that is key, isn't it? I'm sorry? Do what you ask them to do. You messed up my menu. The whole week is gone because I had this planned out, right? So the expectation is, hey, this is why I do the menus the way that I do the menus. And so if you make, I don't know, stroganoff instead of hamburgers, this is what happens. It messes up my entire week. It's that communication. You've got to communicate those expectations. And then give them the why. Tell them why you're asking them to do that. And that's going to be able to empower them to make some good decisions because they understand not just why you need hamburgers tonight, but why you can't have anything else because it impacts the rest of your week. So they're empowered. They're able to really say, wait, I get it. My role here is to help out and fix this meal because it meets the goals of the rest of the week. Little tiny thing, huge impact, right? I mean, if they make something else, you have to go back to the store, you may have a budget issue, you may have a time issue. Little tiny thing can impact your entire organization. So, expectations. Are they who they say they are? That's the other thing. Are they coming in and saying, oh, I can work with older patients. I do it all the time. My parents are older, I get it. Right? But maybe they've never done that. They've been working in pediatrics. So they're used to a different energy level. You've got to really check them out to make sure you're leaving pediatrics to come to work with older patients that don't have that energy level. Can you handle that? Because I expect you to be able to make that transition. I talked to a client yesterday who said that someone he hired back in January still is saying, you know, I'm still traumatized from my last employer, and so I can't work here. I can't do what I need to do here because I'm still traumatized from what happened last time. And I said, it's been a few months. What's really going on? And there was something else going on with that person, right? They're going to say things to you, and that's not really what they're saying. So you've got to communicate your expectations so that you can get to the bottom of why they're doing what they're doing. So let's talk about knowledge, skills, and abilities. Knowledge is what they know. That's what they know. The skills are what they can do. When we talk about positions and we talk about roles, responsibilities, and expectations, this is where we dive down into, can they meet what you're expecting them to do? Can they follow that? Are they able to take a blood pressure? And then find out who they are, right? That's abilities. Knowledge and skill you can train. I worked in an ambulance service for 8.5 years, and we hired EMTs, we hired paramedics, we hired nurses, and we hired PAs. And all of them had certifications that they could hand me that were current. Could all of them work at the same level? No. Could all of them adapt to how we did things at the ambulance service? They couldn't. So we had to be very careful about who we picked. And we had to be careful about how we were assessing the knowledge, skills, and abilities of someone. Which brings us to the interview. You want to think about your process and you want to think about your questions, and those are the two things you need to think about with interviews. Are you taking a long enough time? Is it a good vetting process? Are you asking the right questions? Are you getting the information you need? And I see everybody writing notes. If you want these, just give me your card and I'll send you the slides. Okay? I have no problem doing that. But if you follow the right process and you learn what that is, then ask the right questions, you're going to have more success at hiring. But let me pose a question to you. Let's say that you are all now wonderful singers. Now, we may have some wonderful singers in the audience, and you may sing professionally, but let's say that you do. You're all professional singers now, and you're going to audition for a Broadway show. And you walk up on a stage, with all the lights, and the director and the producers are in the audience. Can you picture that? Can you see, okay, yeah, I'm on the stage, I've got the director and the producer right in the audience, and you're ready. You have an entire repertoire of songs that you can sing. You can sing sad songs and happy songs and slow songs and fast songs, right? All different ranges, all different pitches. You're ready to go. And the director says to you, do you have good pitch? And you say, yes, I do. I have great pitch. Perfect. How's your tone? Beautiful. Can you blend in with other singers? I can. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. We'll get back to you and let you know how you did. Does that seem ludicrous? Right? Isn't that what we do in interviews? How are your organizational skills? Do you have good time management skills? Give me an example of when you use time management. What would happen, and I read an article on this a couple of weeks ago, if you actually auditioned your employees? Now, I'm not suggesting that they get up on a stage and sing, because I would never have gotten a job any time during my history of my working career had that been what I was asked to do. But what if you took somebody's blood pressure, had somebody take your blood pressure, and then when you're interviewing an MA or you're talking to somebody who's going to be providing care to your patients, have them take your blood pressure to see if they're close, or a pulse. Or maybe you have somebody that has two different sized pupils. Some people do. So you have somebody that has two different sized pupils, have them work with that staff member and see if they notice that. What if you set up a practical exam, if you will, to audition them for your particular assisted living facility? Then you're going to know a little bit more about them, aren't you? And if it's a tough patient, if it's an Alzheimer's patient that consistently is inappropriate, either verbally or physically, or it's another patient that is hard of hearing, or it's another patient that can't see, role play with them and see how they deal with that. I'm not suggesting you put the patients in front of the applicants, please understand that. But I am suggesting that you take some of those scenarios and use that as an audition for your new staff member or potential new staff member. Does that make sense? How many people do that? It's important to do. We used to do what we called I guess a practical skills session at the ambulance service, and we would have, one of our employees would play the crazy cat lady, so she was the one that had all the cats, and people would go in and start talking to her, and she would only talk about her cats and not give any health history, and for EMTs or paramedics, not having that health history is very concerning. We need to know what that is and why we're here today. So we would actually have scenarios that we learned out in the field or experienced out in the field and brought them into our application process and our interview, so that we could have some more, I guess, information about those people and how they handled that. Does that seem feasible? Does that seem like something you could do? All right, so don't ask standard questions. They're going to prepare questions in the car. If you know, aside from what we just talked about with the audition, they're going to prepare questions in the car. They're going to know that yes, they're good at teamwork, and yes, they have great organizational skills, and here are my strengths and here are my weaknesses. And everybody's weakness is either I work too much and I always take my work home with me, or you know, I don't really have any weaknesses. Okay, people have weaknesses, right? You can help identify those through some of these things that we're talking about. But I suggest that you change your questions up a little bit and make them more negative. That doesn't sound very friendly, does it? But let's try this. Instead of saying, are you good at customer service? Can you give me an example of when you succeeded at a customer service with a patient or with a client? Say, hey, we've all fallen down on customer service. Give me an example of when that's happened to you and how you handled it, right? We've all worked in teams that the team did not accomplish the goal. Give me an example of what that was like for you and what you did. What you're looking for in the teamwork example is, did they do it on their own and just, that's fine, they just did it on their own so they're done? Did they come to a teacher in a college course maybe, or come to the boss and say, the other team won't work with me, I'm going to take my toys and go home? Did they just do it all? How did they respond to that? It's not the example really that you're looking for, it's what their thought process is. That's what you want to identify in the interview, is what is their thought process? How do they think through things? Is there a situation that you want to throw out that I could help structure a question around? Yes, sir. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to throw out the word why. And I don't mean why are you looking for that. I totally understand that. But I want you to start communicating the why. Why should they work for you? Over maybe a home health community or a home health provider that might pay more. You are marketing. It's not any different than marketing for clients. You're now marketing for employees. You have a brand. You have an employer brand. And what you want to do is you want to start telling people why. Why do you want to work with me? There's a great video. It's by Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. It's a TED Talk, for those of you who are familiar with TED Talks. You can get it on YouTube. And if you just enter in YouTube, Simon Sinek, start with why, you're going to get an 18-minute video that comes up that is amazing. And he talks about how we communicate and how people communicate to get people to do things even though they can't offer them any money. And they can't offer them any perks. But because they believe what you believe, they want to work for you. And then they're not chasing the dollar. If you hire somebody just because of the money, they're going to look for more money somewhere else. If you hire somebody just because of your benefits, they're going to go somewhere else where the benefit package is different or they get 3 more days of vacation. What you need to do is express your why to them in that interview process so that you start pulling those people. It doesn't happen overnight because you've got to learn how to do it. You've got to learn how to express your why, but you can all do that because you know what? In your heart right now, if I say, why are you doing what you're doing? You know. You may not be able to articulate that to me right now, but you know. And that's what you want to do. You want to pull those feelings out of your heart and say, I want people that believe what I believe to work here. So that when I'm gone, I'm not worried that something's going wrong. I'm not worried that they're making stroganoff instead of hamburgers. I know that they're doing what I want them to do. Does that make sense? There was a question. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Right. Right. That's exactly right. Thank you so much for sharing that, because what's in your heart is going to help you get the people that believe what you believe. They're not going to have all of your strengths and weaknesses because you want to hire to your weaknesses. You want to hire people that are better at things that you don't like doing or can't do. Right? For me, it's a bookkeeper. Yep. I've got to have a bookkeeper in place because that is not something I want to do. I want to talk to people. I don't want to have spreadsheets in front of me. Right? Okay. Hang on one second. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah. They're not broken when you get them. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why are they, so for those of you who can hear, she wants to know why people are answering her ad. Why do they want to work with her rather than working at Target? And that's a question that she asked in the interview process. And that's a totally valid question. Keep in mind, their answer may not be exactly what you're looking for, but think about what are they actually saying? Not what are the words, what are the feelings? You know, are they saying that I want to work here because, you know, I need a place to live and I can do that here, and, you know, or are they saying, wow, because when my grandmother was at the end of her life, she didn't have a facility like this, and I would have given anything that she could have lived in this type of facility, and I want to be here to help other people's grandmothers feel good because my grandmother didn't. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that emotion because the compassion that they have is what you need. And it certainly is what your residents need. You had a thought? No? You're good? Okay. All right. All right, we're going to move on. You were going ahead? I'm sorry, you were throwing ahead? Oh, okay. Oh, you want me to throw ahead somewhere? Where should I throw ahead? To Megan? Okay, you ready? I'm sorry, duck is what I'm going to say. Oh, okay, all right. All right, thank you. Good duck, very, very good duck. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that wasn't me. That was not me. Okay, let's move on. So hiring decisions, you know, and this slide's a little hard to see up on the screen, but think about point system. Think about some way to put an objective rating to your subjective questions. And the reason that I do this is because hiring is a liability to you. If you don't hire me, but you hire Susie, who's 25 years old, I can actually come back and say, I think you didn't hire me because I'm an over 40 female. Okay? So you want to be able to say, no, Courtney, I didn't hire you because you didn't score well. Right? So we have Sam Jackson, who has the right knowledge, skills, and abilities, and he scored 90 points. We have Jane Smith, who has lots of experience in a similar industry, and she has 70 points. And we have Kyle Thompson, who is an employee referral and has 45 points. All of those things are important to take into consideration, right? But if you hire Kyle over Jane, you better be able to say why, because the points don't add up. There is an X factor in hiring, and there's no way that I can tell you what your X factor is, but you need to identify it. You need to say, you know what, there's a secret sauce to working here, and every one of my employees that are outstanding, every one of my employees that are superstars, they have this. How can I hire to get that? And that's your X factor, your secret sauce. Those people's secret sauce, whatever that might be. So you want to make sure that you are hiring for that. But that aside, put together some kind of objective rating so that you can actually sit down and say, these candidates, as I lay them out, this really is the best candidate. So the contingent job offer. How many people do contingent job offers? Let's talk about contingent job offers. That's the job offer where I say, Susie, this is my best call anytime I make it. I love making these phone calls. I get to extend you a job offer to work with us. And I love making these job offers. Now this is contingent upon successful completion of background check, drug screen, motor vehicle check if they're driving something for you, right? Probably not a credit check. I can't think of an instance in your industry right now doing what you do that you need to do, that you can legally do a credit check, actually. There may be people that are working with client money in some respects or something like that that may be worthy of a credit check, but the Colorado laws are very specific, so be sure and check that if you're doing credit checks. So do a background check. Vet the candidate. Extend the offer. Yeah, I want you to work for me, but I've got to go through this vetting process to make sure that you're the right one. You still are interviewing and talking to them. You're still going through a process with them. So even though you're extending a contingent job offer, that doesn't mean that it's a done deal yet. They may need to think about it. That's okay. They may never get back to you. And that's okay too, because they realized it wasn't a good fit. And all that would be, if they were getting back to you and working for you, is they're looking for another job while they're there. So that's not going to help you at all. So if they don't get back to you, say, wow, okay, next. What's the next person that I want to talk to? Extend the contingent job offer. Give them the position, the roles, responsibilities, and expectations, again, because that's going to come into line when we talk about managing the employees. Talk about pay, talk about benefits, have them come in and fill out new hire paperwork. And the checklist that's right at that table has the new hire paperwork you need for Colorado. Okay? It's got the list of it. Then you're going to do the background check, the drug screen, certification, verification. I had a doctor's office that I was working with that said, okay, yeah, this guy, we're hiring him, and he's bringing in his certification. He starts tomorrow. And I said, perfect. And he came in without his certification, and they let him work. And a week later, they said, hey, we really need your certification, and they let him work. And a week later, they said, it's okay, we need your certification, and they let him work. Okay? They ended up firing him because he lied about being certified. So make sure that if you need certification or licensure, you have that in your hand. And then have some kind of tracking mechanism to see when that might expire and when it has to be redone. All right, I used to use Excel spreadsheets. There are lots of better, that shows you how long ago I worked in the ambulance industry. There are lots of better tools out there now to track that. Okay. All right, so you're gonna go ahead and once everything comes back, you're gonna extend that hire, that offer, and it's gonna be a formal job offer, all right? Let's talk about Colorado for a second. Colorado made an interesting decision a couple of years ago, and it's thrown employers into some kind of loop-de-loop ever since. It is okay to not hire someone because they tested positive for pot, even though pot is legal in Colorado. Okay? Did everybody hear that? All right. It is okay that if there's an accident and you do a random drug test or you do a drug test because there was an accident or something, and they test positive for pot, and it's even medical marijuana, it's okay to terminate them because they tested positive for pot. All right? The Supreme Court has said that. The federal law is it is still illegal. Watch the laws, see what happens, but at this point, as employers, we are under no obligation to keep or to hire somebody because they tested positive for pot. Okay? All right. Okay, so make your final offer, make it written, and then I used to send out reject letters, but one of my bosses said that sounds too harsh, so now I send out thanks, but unfortunately no letters. So you want to make sure that you send those out. Why would it be important to reject somebody, to send them a letter to follow up and say you were not selected for the position? It has something to do with marketing. What is it? Okay, yes? Oh, you have a thought, I can tell.
I was thinking, shows that, you're thinking about it.
Yep.
You want to follow up.
Absolutely, and guess what? They may have a grandma or a parent that needs your services. And if you do the right thing by them, then they are going to reach out to you. And they're going to say, oh, you know what? I applied with this assisted living facility and I didn't get the job, but man, they were so nice. I was so sad I didn't get it. I want to send my parent there, or I want to send my grandparent there. You're still marketing throughout this entire process, not just for employees, but for clients as well, right? So make sure that you send those out and do those on a timely basis. Okay, so the new employee orientation is really easy. It's a two-step process. You want to do a new employee orientation that talks about your brand, that talks about what you expect, that talks about what you do, your mission, your vision, your value statements, all those things, the general company orientation, if you will. All right? Then you're going to train them. These are the specific rules for your job. You're going to be our cook. Here are the things you need to remember about OSHA regulations. You're going to be a marketing person for us. Here are the things we want you to know about, are we going to pay you for mileage? Are we going to provide you a computer? Are we going to, here are the things that we're going to train you on so that you can teach those things. You're a care provider. Great, here you go. These are the things you need to know. So the training is more job specific. The new employee orientation is about the whole company. Don't miss those steps. We were talking earlier about you're behind the 8 ball. I want you to open up your mind and say you are always hiring. When somebody comes and they serve you lunch at a restaurant, I want you to wonder if they could work for you. As you walk around this conference center, maybe there's somebody here that really wants to move to Denver and work for you. You might want to find out about that. Don't be afraid to give them your card. Hey, you're getting ready to graduate from school. Is this what you want to do the rest of your life? No? What do you want to do? I'd really like to do something to care for, for people. Perfect, here's my card. Let's talk. Let's talk. Always be recruiting so that you're not behind the gun, so that you're not hiring somebody that is not meant to work for you. Yes, sir. Wow, that was bold.
Very succinctly that that's not an accepted practice.
Right, stop that.
I train my staff not to do that as well. And so it's very developing training in terms of recruiting doing it with most integrity. That's one thing passing that out here in the after where you are.
Right. Wow, they do that? Oh, we don't do that, right? I mean, that's not what you want to do, because then your brand is tarnished. Your employer brand is tarnished. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so orientation. Day to day. Here are two things that I really think are important. Check-ins, which is, hey, how are you doing? How's it going? I heard you were having some trouble with your, school, or you were having some trouble at home, or your dog is sick. You want to talk to your employees and get to know them and have those check-ins and have those real conversations with them, so that when you come up and say, hey, last night you made hamburgers and that really messed up. Thanks for that example. It's been working throughout the entire day. I already gave you a head, so I don't know what to say. Okay, so you made hamburgers and I need you to not do that again, and this is why. They listen to you. If you don't have a rapport with them, if you don't have that kind of rapport that you can have a normal, so to speak, conversation with them, when you go to them and you criticize them or you coach them or you discipline them, the bucket's empty and they're not happy and their attitude's going to be horrible. But if I have a really good rapport with somebody and I walk up and I say, hey, I know it was a while ago when we talked about menus, but let me explain to you what's happening and how what you did last night really impacted our house. Those kinds of conversations are much easier. So that's check-ins. 4x4s are setting up goals for your employees. Maybe it's with a certain resident that you have. Maybe it is with a coworker in building a program of some sort. But 4x4s are setting up 4 goals for the month. You meet with them, you set up those 4 goals for the month, and you can pick a number. I picked 4 because of 4 weeks. So 4 goals for a month, and then you meet with them in a month and you say, hey, how did you do on those 4 goals? What are your next 4 goals? So I call them 4x4s. And it keeps them moving forward. It keeps them putting their foot in front of each other. All right? Now the performance reviews, huge conversations about performance reviews in my industry. HR people are going berserk over performance reviews. Get rid of the performance review. I'm going to tell you, no, don't do that. There's this whole sector of HR people that say, don't ever do performance reviews again. You need to talk to people every day. And then there's this other sector of HR people that say, oh my gosh, no, we can't get rid of performance reviews. We have to just do performance reviews. Yeah, I'm standing right here in the middle saying these two are not mutually exclusive. Talk to people every single day and still do formal performance reviews. Because that's going to help you if you want to promote them, or if you're having disciplinary issues, you've got formal documentation of where they work. Right? No. Exactly, that's exactly right. When you do performance reviews, don't ever let it be a surprise. They should know, right? And that's where we're going to talk in. Here's check-ins. Check-ins go down over time probably. If you hire somebody, you're going to have more check-ins, and then they go down. They never go away. You're always going to be talking to people. And with performance reviews, you're going to have the formal, and then you're going to have the day-to-day conversation. Okay? But let's talk about discipline, because those workers that you have that are not cutting it, I want you to think about a progressive discipline process. Here are the things you need to think about. Progressive discipline is a series of steps that we're going to go over here in a second. There's another thing called progressive frustration. So Susie's late, I'm not going to talk to her. Susie's late again, I'm not going to talk to her. All I'm doing is documenting. Susie's late again, I'm not going to talk to her. Then I meet with Susie and I fire her because she's late. Well, one, that's a surprise to Susie. That outcome is never good, to have a surprise with an employee, a surprise termination. The other thing is you're not protected at all. If Susie is me, if Susie is Courtney, over 40, and I say you fired me because I'm an over 40 female, I'm harping on that, but I am an over 40 female. So anyway, what you want to do is you want to have awareness counseling. Hey Susie, I noticed you were late today. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I was just late. Okay, no problem. You usually aren't, so I just wanted to make sure. Next step, Susie's still late. Hey, this is a verbal warning. You can turn this around. I know you can turn this around. I don't want to go down the discipline path. So I just want you to know it's a verbal warning. The next step is a written warning. I need you to be on time, and this is why I need you to be on time. The next step is a written warning. There are no magic numbers of written warnings. 3 is not a magic number. 3 is typical, but 3 is not a magic number. All right? I worked with a client who had supervisors who took a female employee, tied her to a pole, and doused her with water. We didn't say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, taking a employee and tying her up and dousing her with water is not okay. This is an awareness counseling. I'm not writing anything down, right? We didn't do that. We jumped further down the line. Okay? There are situations where you're going to go straight to a final warning. There are situations where you're going to terminate immediately. If somebody causes harm to one of your residents, you're going to terminate immediately. That's not an awareness counseling situation. All right? So written warnings, final written warning, and then termination. There can be a suspension in there. Unless you're unionized and it's a requirement of your collective bargaining agreement, do not pay someone for a suspension. What do I call that? Vacation, right? Oh, you get time off and I'm going to pay you, even though it's a disciplinary action. Don't do that. So if you have to suspend somebody, which is not required, but if you have to, suspend them without pay. If you do some kind of investigation and find they were not in the wrong, they didn't do anything wrong, then you can do back pay for them. Okay? Does that make sense? I breezed over that, but does that make sense to everybody? All right. Termination, not necessarily in this order, and don't look like this gray-haired HR lady. You know, as I was growing up, I never imagined I would be a gray-haired HR lady, and look, I don't know what to say. All right, but don't look like this. Don't look like this little smug gray-haired HR lady. Don't lean over the desk and start screaming at them like that. That's not productive. It's not going to help in any part of the disciplinary or termination process. All right. Your goal out of discipline is to save the employee. But just as in medicine, you can't save every patient, you can't save every employee. It's not possible. Some employees are going to have to go. And in those cases, then your goal of discipline is to protect yourself and make sure that you've got documentation saying this is what we tried to do to turn that around. This is what we tried to do to create an atmosphere of success for them. And that's really what we do when we talk about termination. Have you created an atmosphere of success? That's what you want. You want to give them the tools and the training and the time and the support and the communication that's going to make them successful. So that's number one. If you're getting ready to terminate someone, have you done that? Have you written them up? Have you given them enough warning? Have you told them what's expected and how they're not meeting expectations? Did you give them enough time to do that? Holy cow. Okay, I need your certification and I need it tomorrow. Well, the test isn't for another 4 weeks. Well, I don't care. You're terminated, right? Can you put them on some kind of leave while they're gone, while they're studying for their test and they take their test? Whatever that might be. Think about how you can help them be successful, especially if they're one of the rock stars and they slipped. Okay? And is there anything else you can do? Is there anything else that you can do before you terminate? So in other words, when you terminate, you're going to have that feeling in your stomach of I have to terminate somebody, and that impacts their life, and that impacts their family's life, and that impacts their kid's life. Holy cow. I know you're going to have that nervous stomach, but don't have a nervous stomach because you didn't do all you could do. Have a nervous stomach because you know it's going to impact them, and do it knowing that they know it's coming because you've warned them so many times. Okay? All right, safety first. Let's talk about safety. Discipline, and this is a thing that I harp on because you don't think about it. There was a situation in Greeley, actually, many years ago, where a guy walked into his employer, sat down in a conference room, and was given a verbal warning by HR and his supervisor. He stood up after the verbal warning. This did not go in his file. It was a verbal warning. Stood up and shot both of them. Then he walked out. Everybody heard the shots. He walked out into the parking lot. A gunfight ensued with police. I think one of the officers was actually shot in that, but he was killed. The employee was killed. And I don't know if it was a suicide by cop. I don't know what it was, but it was a verbal warning. And it was because the supervisor and the HR person were sitting on this side of the table, and the employee was sitting on that side of the table and had all control of all doors. There was no way for them to get out of that conference room. So be thinking about where you're sitting when you're talking to your employees. If you have an office that you sit in and you have a huge desk that you sit behind and the door's in front of you and the employee's sitting there, switch. Sit in a chair next to the employee closest to the door. Think about what you're doing. Okay? If you know that an employee is volatile or that you're going to have a tough conversation, make sure that people are around. Not necessarily, close, but they're around to come in if there's a problem, and always have a witness. Have another manager or a lead worker in there that is able to sit with you. Because if something goes sideways in that conversation, you've got somebody in there to say, no, wait, that's not how it went. And I always say when the witness is in there, please take notes. Jane is here to take notes today. Okay? The police, in this day and age, when you call and say, I have an at-risk termination, I'm very concerned about the safety of myself, as well as my employees and my residents, they're going to be there. Because we know what happens. And they take these things seriously. Right? So safety first, please. So the important takeaway from today is communicate. That's the important takeaway. You want to communicate exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, how they impact you. If they're doing something wrong, what are they doing wrong? What do you need them to do, and how long, what time frame do you need them to do that in? Okay. All right. I am open for questions, comments, whatever I can do to help you. Yes. You have a referred staff? Is that what you said? Graveyard staff. Okay, I'm sorry. Right. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and that's hard. Do you have people that their shift butts up against the graveyard shift? So you can have a person have a list of things to talk about, and then they talk to that person about that list of things. So it's not just, let's say that you and I have shifts that are just right up against each other. I work till 10, you come on at 10 p.m., okay? So when you come in, I'm going to have this list, and I'm going to say, hey, our director gave me this list to go over with you. I want to talk to you about everything that was said. And then if you have any questions, she's happy to have you call her. He's happy to have you call him, whatever, or send an email about these issues so that you have that personal contact. The other thing that I would advise as a director or an owner of one of these facilities is make yourself available at least once a month where you can see all the shifts. So, come in at noon and leave at, I'm not going to say you have an 8-hour shift because I know you don't, okay, so that's kind of ridiculous. But come in later in the day and leave after 10 so you're able to connect and communicate. Because making that connection is important. If I'm working by myself and I don't really know that you exist other than a name and an email, I'm not really loyal to you. Right? And I think that these residents are my residents, and don't mess them up during the day because I've got them at night. So you want to have that communication, you want to have that connection with all your staff around the clock. Yes, ma'am. That's a great idea for everybody that couldn't hear that. It's going in during that graveyard shift and having a meeting with your graveyard staff. making sure that, again, you're making that connection and you're building that relationship with them. Did that help you with your question, ma'am? Okay. Did you have? So you can, again, as part of that audition that I talked about, have them make you a meal. Tell them you're going to pay them $50 or whatever to make you a meal. Have them cook for you. And have them, ask them about a meal that you normally make. You may not say pheasant under glass, but you may say, I want you to make lasagna for me. Right. Right. There are. Because they're not necessarily going to be forthcoming. Yeah. Yeah. You can. So I wouldn't say you're on probation for 2 weeks because they're on probation. This is an at-will state. So they're always on probation. I mean, and that's one thing I don't believe in the word probation, because when probation ends, then what? They're permanently there? I don't use the word permanent employee because nobody's permanent. Nobody's permanent. So what I would say is we're going to try this for 2 weeks and we're going to touch base and see how we're doing. Right? Same thing, different phraseology, and that's it. Because I don't want them to think after that 2 week, okay, I know 2 weeks worth of recipes, and so after 2 weeks I'm still good, but maybe they're not good on week 3. I don't want you to get into that situation. So just say, hey, we're going to try this for a couple of weeks, and then we're going to sit down and talk about how we're doing. And in the middle of that, be sure and talk to them on a regular basis through check-ins. Okay, absolutely, yes. Right. It does, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you can't terminate them early in their career with you. Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that a lot of times when
Yes.
there's a perception that it would indicate your reproduction process is absolutely so be very careful about not doing well, I should have played
Right. Yeah, at-will's great to say, and all that means is they can leave at any time for any reason with or without notice, and you can fire them for any time for any reason with or without notice. But I totally agree, and that's why we talked about discipline so much. That's where your liability is. Discipline and termination is even more of a liability for you than hiring. So make sure that you're documenting and make sure that there aren't any surprises so that your employees understand. Because it's not just even about the employee you're going to fire, right? It's about the employees that are left that think you have some kind of dartboard in your office with their names on it, and you just pick a dart, throw it, and say, oh, look, Courtney's getting fired today, right? But when you go through a process, trust me, you can't talk about it, but the employees are. They're talking about that process. Yep. Right? And the good performers are saying, well, I can just be mediocre now because that person is getting away with those things. All right? I think Corky's up. I think we're out of time. Are we out of time? No? We're close to out of time. Are we out of time? That's it. That's it. I'm done. Thank you very much. I have handouts on my business cards up here if you want. The handout is just